The best thing in Captain America 4, the best thing, is the acting. I know! I'm just as surprised. But these three guys, they really bring the feels. I mean, you know Carl Lumley's going to break your heart. What a sweetheart. But Harrison Ford, I felt so bad for him. I'm just like, leave these guys alone. They just want to be good. And that's really what this movie is about. Captain America 4 it's a beautiful thing. You know, I really enjoy, if you liked the Falcon and Winter Soldier Disney Plus series, and I have to say, now that I've seen this movie, it does feel cinematic. I do think that they, you know, raised the bar to make this something that should be seen on a movie screen. But Falcon and Winter Soldier was not only like a really good mystery and a thriller, you know, and a comic book story, but I thought that the commentary and the heart of it and the intellectual, you know, like the character development, I guess you could say, was one of the strengths that we haven't seen in a lot of other Marvel content. And I'm happy to say that that's very much a part of this film as well. Although we are going to talk about it. This is a non-spoiler review, but I don't think this isn't a particularly political film, although it also does feel very of the moment. I really liked it, but it's about flawed human beings trying to be good men in a world that was complex to begin with, but has been made even more complex now that it involves superheroes and all that entails, which is very interesting. When I was watching the movie, I was like, Sam, you got to take the super soldier serum. Like, what are we doing here? And even Sam is questioning it during the film. But when I think about it afterwards, I think what ties these three men together, this is actually like a very, very clever film, especially thematically. But what ties these three men together is not just their military service, which I love. I love this movie's focus on not so much like the military, but the people in the military. I think that's really great. But that they're humans, regular men who are warped by this brave new world. You know, how does a human traverse the world that the MCU has created, right? You know, Hawkeye kind of explored that a little bit as well by giving him the hearing aid, which I thought was really cool. You know, and especially by the end of this movie, I mean, like the superhero world has done a number on some of them, but their humanity remains at their core. It's, you know, they're still regular men. And I love that. And that's beautiful. Pretty deep stuff for a Marvel movie, right? But Kevin Feige, Kevin Feige used to be the only producer on Marvel movies, but now these days he's starting to have somebody else produce with him. And in this case, it's Nate Moore, who's worked on a couple of other Marvel projects, most notably, Eternals is one, but also the Black Panther films and the Falcon and Winter Soldier series. I believe I saw a headline that Nate Moore is striking out on his own. And I'll be curious to see what kind of movies he produces, because I think, you know, he has a strong social commentary to the superhero work that he's done, and which I appreciate. But those two men, along with director Julius Ona, they still understand the assignment that this is a comic book movie. But shrewdly, even more so than Winter Soldier, I would say, this is a mashup of not just a Tom Clancy novel, but in this case, I would say a Saturday morning cartoon. In a good way, because this means the dads and their kids can really enjoy this film. My parents have selected this film as their Valentine's Day movie because my mom knows how much my dad likes Harrison Ford and Tom Clancy type stories. So they're like, oh, we're going to go and see that. And when I watched the film, it made me feel nice. I was like, oh, they're in for a treat. I think they're really going to like this film. So that made me very happy. Also at my press screening, there was a man sitting a row behind me who brought his tween son. And they loved this movie so much they were talking all the way through the whole thing. They weren't like talking in spite of the film. They were like so into it that they were talking during the film about the film. You know, it was a little frustrating, but I've been on the other side of it. And it reminded me of when I've recently had some movie outings with my own dad that I've talked to you about, where, you know, my dad and I have gone crazy about a movie, and I'm sure kind of frustrated some of the people around us. Mission Impossible, my dad and I, we were singing the theme song. We were like, do, 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 in our seats. We had such a good time. I'll never forget that. And also Wicked recently. Those are the two films that my dad they just sent my dad over the top. And I saw that same vibe with this father and his son for this movie. And I thought that was really sweet. And I think that a great way to describe Captain America Brave New World is that it's a family version of Mission Impossible. I almost called it, like Mission Impossible Jr., but I don't think that's accurate. I think it's more sophisticated than that. Again, I think family film is the right way to go. It's Tom Clancy, but also a little G.I. Joe. Again, as I said, a little Saturday morning cartoon. But also enough real-world gravitas with men dealing with real shit. And so I think that adults can connect to it, which is fantastic, but at the same time, kids can find it accessible, but also be like, wow, this is kind of a grown-up movie that I'm getting to watch. I just really think that the movie should not be underestimated for how nice that is to put out into the space. It's really, I'm impressed. It's rare that you see a film that can operate not only as a family film, but also just as a film for adults as well. I enjoyed it as a comic book fan quite a bit. By the way, Anthony Mackie has said that he wants his Captain America to be a hero for all kids. And just in case you were wondering, the father and son behind me happen to be white. And again, they absolutely love the movie. So Anthony Mackie should feel great that, he is, creating a character for all. And that's very much what Sam Wilson wants to do. Now, before we dig a little deeper into the film, but again, don't worry, no spoilers. Does the movie have any flaws? Well, I would say it has 4 flaws. All right, so 1, the superhero CGI is too much, especially since the Tom Clancy elements of the film hit so hard. So you're like, yeah, this is great. This film's so real. Look at the lighting on that and the camera placement. This shot's amazing. And then boop, they go over to a CGI action sequence that looks too cartoonish. And you're like, man, that's just a mess of pixels. You don't even buy that it's real. And you've seen a little bit of that from the trailers. Then 2, I'm sorry, Sam, but again, you got to take the serum. I think the movie has some nice speeches about why he doesn't need the serum, but I got to tell you, I think he needs the serum. I would even say it's bordering on irresponsible a little bit at this point, because he simply cannot operate at the level that he needs to take on Avengers level or, just Captain America level threats. I know he's got a fancy new suit, which in this movie is Batman level tricked out, but he'd still be a puddle of mush inside of it by the end of some of these action scenes. I'm like, it's just totally unreasonable. I think there would be an intervention being like, yeah, I don't know why people are trying to talk him out of taking the serum when I think they should be doing the opposite. I'm like, everybody else who's taking it is okay. So, maybe it would be interesting if because that would kind of reflect some current conversations as well, if maybe that's why Sam didn't want to take it. I don't see a reason not to take it, to be honest with you. They're not like, there are side effects. They're like, no, it's awesome, but Sam's like, I'm just going to, not going to take it. And you're like, what? All right, 3, on that note, Marvel's second unit, which is the term in Hollywood for the unit that handles the action sequences. They need to step up their game. With the exception of the aircraft carrier battle sequence, I liked that a lot. I thought that was very good. And there are tons of flippy kicks in this movie. More flippy kicks than you could ever want. And as you know, I'm a big fan of the flippy kick. And I must say, Sam really knows how to use that shield at this point. Although, how's he catching it without the super soldier serum? You'd think it would break his wrist or something at this point, because that thing's really moving. But on the whole, the action is not at the level that it should be for a franchise film, this far into the franchise. So this is the 25th or something film of Marvel. I think they're in the 30. They made a lot of movies. The action should be better than this. And then finally, for the flaws, 4, the budget that this movie is burdened with. I feel bad. Is it over 300 million or is it just shy of 200 million? Nobody knows for sure, right? But either way, it's not good. Now, sure, the pandemic and having to do reshoots are responsible for the inflated budget, but it plays like an $80 million movie. And if that was the budget, it would be lean and mean in the marketplace and it would be fantastic. But as is, it doesn't have the huzzah of we spent hundreds of millions of dollars on this. You're like, again, it was the pandemic and having to do reshoots. But, to be fair, Marvel has never had a movie with a budget under 100 million. So I guess, 80 is not, they just couldn't do it for 80 maybe. But there's really no big names here except for Harrison Ford. So only he really needs a payday. So, Aquaman cost 160, Wonder Woman 150. This should be around there. And I guess 180 is kind of close to that. we'll see what the budget maybe we'll never see what the budget actually is, but it's, if only the film hadn't had so many reshoots, I think it would be positioned in a better place financially. Because I like the movie a lot. I think what they ended up with is very strong. Right from the very beginning, I was like, damn, this movie looks good. All right, back to what's good about the film. On that note, outside of when the Marvel second unit takes over, and you can tell when they take over because the movie loses its personality. But when director Julius Ona is behind the camera, he does a fantastic job. This man has studied the Tom Clancy film, and it's fantastic. Again, as I said, it feels cinematic. What he does with lighting and framing and camera placement is just phenomenal. There are so many shots that are just gorgeous. You know, in politics and in history, there are lots of famous photos. And this movie often feels like a series of like instantly iconic historic photos. And that's really cool. I really like that element of the film a lot. And the fact that this is top-notch Tom Clancy filmmaking, and then Anthony Mackie is in the center of it, you know, having a black lead, it's iconic. It's a very big deal. And the movie realizes that it doesn't need to say anything about that. It just, by doing it, that's what is iconic, and that's what is a big step forward. And I think that's really impressive. And despite how the press tour has been going, Captain America: Brave New World is not, as I said, an overly political film. And I don't think it's divisive. I didn't find it divisive at all. But it doesn't put its head in the sand either. Sam Wilson is aware of the complex situation that he lives in, the world that he lives in, the Brave New World, and the players that are on the board. And he knows they're not all of his friends. But he's a good man who believes in second chances, and also that we're stronger together than we are apart. You know, very much. You know, I know that Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie, has said that, you know, these are qualities that everyone, you know, regardless of their nationality, should aspire to. And I think that's true. But historically, they do pull from a lot of, you know, the good and the bad of American history. And, you know, of course, there's the famous, you know, Abraham Lincoln quote, you know, a nation divided against itself cannot stand. And Sam Wilson feels that in his bones. And I think there's real power in that. I think it's really, really good. It's interesting to me, very interesting, that Captain America: Brave New World and Thunderbolts both seem to spin out of Falcon and Winter Soldier, and that both movies personify Sam and Bucky independently. Because while they both believe in redemption, only Bucky has needed to be redeemed. Sam Wilson, and this is very unique for comics and movies, he's not a broken man, which I think is, I mean, he's had his problems, obviously, but not compared to everybody else. And that is a huge part of his character. And I think that's really interesting. However, and this is even more interesting, again, this is a very well-constructed movie. Here in the film, he is dealing with two men who are very broken, President Ross and Isaiah Bradley. And just as he was doing when we first met him, Sam Wilson is still counseling veterans and pulling them back from the brink. It's beautiful. It's poetic. I think it's really strong. So yes, Sam Wilson is not Steve Rogers, and the differences between their Captain Americas are fascinating. You could write a paper on it. I love it. In some ways, I kind of am with my videos. For instance, no spoilers, I will say that while Steve was a man out of time, which made him very much a loner, Sam Wilson is very group-oriented, and not just any group, but he's particularly with a part of the military. His love for his fellow soldier on sight, I think, is really wonderful and patriotic. He doesn't see himself as separate from the military, but a part of it. However, he also believes in checks and balances because he believes in responsible government, and I think that's all excellent. Do I think Steve Rogers was right to give Sam Wilson the shield? That's the big question. That's something that Sam himself grappled with in the Disney Plus series. And that series was about Sam, you know, not only physically, but emotionally accepting the mantle. Now with the movie, now that he's done that, he's put to the test as Captain America. This is really his first full outing as Cap. And I think you can see that Steve was looking for a man not only worthy of wearing the flag, but who would do so responsibly. And I think there's no question watching this film that Steve made the right choice. Sam Wilson is such an incredible, admirable person. It's just really wonderful to see. But take the super soldier serum, buddy. I'm telling you, you gotta take it. All right. Also, the movie could use a few more heavy hitters. Even Cap, after his first movie, got tons of assists. And that's one of the reasons his movies did so well. Like Civil War is an Avengers movie. Here, we do have another Black Widow working for the U.S. government directly. And Danny Ramirez is Falcon. But just like Steve Rogers, Sam Wilson shines in particular when he's leading a team. So I wish that Sam Wilson had a bigger team here to lead up just like Steve often did. I'd say my favorite parts of the film are the Tom Clancy style government thriller sequences. I'm like, this looks so good. The acting of the three leads, again, incredible work. And I mean, you would not expect to have this kind of emotional exploration in a comic book movie, particularly from Marvel. Although outside of WandaVision. But also, but it's interesting because, it's a very different context. Here, it's men and their feelings. And I think it does it really well. And that big battle carrier sequence, I really like that as well. I thought the CGI there blended very nicely. Also, I love Sam and Joaquin's new base of operations. Oh, no spoilers. You'll see it. It's small. It's only in one scene. But it was gorgeous. I was like, I love this for you too. I mean, it was beautiful. The set designer, the fact that they made that, it was one of the coolest things I ever saw. It was so hard not to snap a picture of it because it looked so good. I was like, oh, I want everyone to see this. Can I go here? All right, as for the rest of the cast, making Falcon also a skilled hacker is a great addition to the Captain America team. I was like, oh yes, this skill set is valuable to the group. And while it wouldn't be a Captain America movie without a Black Widow, Shira Haas's character has little to no development, which is weird because how would an Israeli end up in the Red Room for the Black Widow program and then end up working for the U.S. government? That's quite the path. And to not explore it at all, I mean, I guess, it's difficult for the film, but I mean, they created the situation. I mean, let's go there. But even worse for a Black Widow character, she has no real big action sequences. The biggest thing is they're like, she's so tiny, but look how she can dish out the hurt. But she doesn't dish out a lot of hurt. She was fine. Of course, again, Captain America movies should have a Black Widow in them, but I think the character could have been more. Giancarlo Esposito, though, does an excellent job as one of Cap's lesser villains. I really liked this character actually quite a bit. And Esposito, by the way, manages to make this character seem very unique, despite the fact that Esposito seems to be everywhere these days. I thought maybe he was overexposed, but he did a great job here. I really liked him a lot. I was like, ooh, you build out your rogues gallery, Sam Wilson. Tim Blake Nelson? We'll talk about him in the spoiler review. I don't want to give anything away. All right, the casting directors also did a very nice job with all the heads of state and the extras and the political scenes, including Shogun's Takahiro Hira as the Japanese prime minister. It not only gave the film, again, that political thriller feel, and also felt like a real one. Like they felt like a real political thriller. I like that a lot. But it also highlighted that America is a player on a world stage. It might be one of the bigger players, but it's still a player, and there are other players in the game. But that even with all the superhero shenanigans in the MCU, there are still countries, and they still have to forge a path forward, and they're still the responsible adults in the room to a degree. And I thought, and how do they navigate this brave new world? I mean, the title of the movie makes a lot of sense. So, as someone whose dad got them interested in history and political thrillers, I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was great. It made me think, it has heart, and it not only feels like a Captain America movie, but also like a Disney Marvel movie. And that's something very unique. That's very, very unique. I don't think we have anything like this in the Hollywood space. A political thriller that families can enjoy. And it still has merit. It's not like, oh, isn't that cute? No, it's like a legitimate political thriller, but accessible to families. And I like that a lot. And I must say, it was really nice also to have a focus on regular people wanting to be good, despite their mistakes. Again, it's a little bit like Thunderbolts, but again, Bucky versus Sam. But in that regard, I thought the movie was extremely aspirational. And inspirational. I thought it was great. Finally, there is one end credit scene at the very, very end of the credits, like right before the lights come up. And nothing really happens in it, I mean, you're going to want to see it for yourself, I'm sure. You're like, I got to know for sure. That couldn't possibly be true. But it is. So I'm not even quite sure why they included it. But you know what? Just enjoy the movie you just watched, right? There's a novel idea. All right, so that's my non-spoiler review of Captain America, Brave New World. Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.